Hello and welcome to ADHD Support Talk Radio. My name is Tara McGillicuddy and I am the host of ADHD Support Talk Radio. I am also an adult ADD and ADHD productivity coach and the founder and director of ADDclasses.com. And at ADDclasses.com, we provide virtual support and education to people affected by ADD and ADHD. We offer free webinars. We have an extensive ADD audio library with more than 175 hours of courses, and we also offer more in-depth support programs. You can learn more about ADDclasses.com and sign up for a free webinar by going to the website www.addclasses.com. And with that, I would like to welcome back Jonathan Carroll to ADHD Support Talk Radio. In just a moment, we're going to be talking about ADHD and politics. But before we get into the discussion, Jonathan, can you let our listeners know a bit about yourself and how to get in touch with you after the show?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me again, Tara. I always love coming on your show, and we have it's always an enjoyable conversation. I'm sure today will not disappoint either. But my website is ADHDguru.com. You can also find me on iTunes, Google Play Store, Stitcher Radio, or tune in. I have a podcast I do again. I always call it the second best podcast behind yours, of course. So I do a podcast. You can find me on social media, Twitter at ADHD Guru, or on YouTube. You can call me at area code 877-398-2343, or shoot me an email to Jonathan, that's Jonathan, at ADHDefcoach.com. And I should probably tell you what I do. I'm an ADHD and executive functioning coach, so you're already getting excited on this controversial topic, so this should be good.
Yeah, so let's get started. And this is one of the topics that I stayed away for months. It's like I wanted to talk about Donald Trump and politics and ADHD, but I'm like, nah, it's too sensitive. I don't want to start people going back and forth and being upset. But as we're recording it, it's April, and I think it's time to talk about it because it's important and it's affecting people. When you have ADHD, you kind of filter and handle discussions about politics and Donald Trump different than the average person. So where do you think we should begin with this discussion, Jonathan?
Well, we were talking, before the podcast that, I mentioned I did a podcast several months ago after the election and was trying to just talk with people about how to handle things that we don't like. I think this is probably, certainly in my lifetime, I can't speak to people that were alive during the Lincoln administration because I wasn't, but let's say this is probably the most polarizing election in my lifetime, and not even close. I mean, you had two really polarizing figures, and President Trump is without a doubt the most polarizing president of our lifetime, and I think that he brings out the best in some people and the worst in other people. And it's really led to people that love him or hate him, but they definitely have feelings about him. So it's been pretty rough. And we talked about some people, some people that I know, even some people, professionals that I know, that I almost feel really cross a line with how they talk about feelings related to the president and things like that. So it's been really one of those things where I'm like, okay, it's beyond, it's gone from almost being like, I don't like this guy, to almost dictating and ruining people's lives.
Yes.
And so for us folks with ADHD, and I also should mention I have ADHD as well, I have trouble with filters, and Tara probably would be happy to share stories of my lack of filters. If you ever see us at a conference or something and you pull us aside, I'm sure you'll experience it firsthand. But, there's a lack of filter sometimes. And, you can say the most innocent comment about someone, and especially a polarizing figure like President Trump, and people will take that and run with it and jump all over you and say all kinds of nasty things to you that really get blown up. So I think they say that you should never discuss religion or politics with people, and I think that especially in this climate, especially politics. So.
And those of us with ADHD, we're more prone to have issues regulating emotions. And Trump, the discussion of Trump, whether you love him, hate him, or you're somewhere in between, he triggers emotions for people. So when you have ADHD, I mean, that's something to be aware of, that the average person's probably triggered and can't stand Trump, or I don't even want to say, they can't stand him. But it brings something up in the average person. When you have ADHD, you're even more likely to get triggered and be more or be more impulsive with your emotions when it comes to discussing Trump. So, and just, I think, pay attention to that. And I know, like, this whole election process, like, I unfollowed multiple people on Facebook, like colleagues, people I like, people I've, known since I was 10 years old. I'm like, I cannot deal with the negativity, and I can be triggered enough. And, like, there were, even before Trump, there were a couple of discussions online that I argued with people about, and it was, like, both ends of the spectrum. I'm like, I just wanted them to see the other side, and people couldn't see the other side. And I'm just like, so I know it triggers me, so I've unfollowed people on Facebook, and every once in a while, there's somebody who talks about politics but doesn't talk about it. Times like, okay, no, I'm not getting into that discussion on Facebook, because you're not going to change anybody's mind about politics, about Trump on Facebook, and more than likely it's just going to make you upset, and it's not going to help you discuss politics and Trump on Facebook or anywhere else.
Right, and it's interesting you say that, because we did a podcast a while ago on social media boundaries, and sort of along the same lines as whether or not I have an opinion on these things, and I do. I choose not to share them on social media for a few reasons. One is because I think some people like to call them trolls, or people that really are looking to engage in fights with you. I think professionally in my job, it's probably important that I stay away from posting things that are controversial. Again, I do have opinions, and I'm not afraid to express those, but I think sometimes if I'm not talking to someone and I put a post on Facebook, somebody could take that information, run with it, and make it sound like, I mean something that I don't. And I mentioned the podcast I did right after the election. I mean, I received a pretty strongly worded email from someone who said, how I'm a Hillary supporter and I'm this and I'm that. And I responded to the guy and said, what I am and what I'm not are nothing to do with this. I'm like, I'm just stating for you my observations. And the guy responded back to me and he says, I appreciate your honesty and transparency, because it's true. It's like you take one small thing and someone can run with that and make it something much more than that. And I'm sorry, let me just follow up. And we just saw this with this, at the time we record this, it's the day after sort of that United Airlines situation with the gentleman being taken off the plane. And I mean, the directions of that story and people's emotions about that and all the other things related to that are really, transparent and triggering feelings and frustrations with other people's negative experience with flying and this, that, and the other. So, we really are in a society and in a world today where if you have an opinion on something, you better darn well know your audience, and you better darn well, stand behind what it is you're saying, because in the camera phone generation, I guess that's what we could say is the camera phone, Jesus. In those things, it's like, anything you say or do is going to get caught and played. And you just have to know that, sometimes people don't respond as well to us as we would like.
No. And the thing with Donald Trump, it's like we are in different realities, or people are in different realities when it comes to Trump. You have the ones that love him, the ones that hate him, and then some people that are somewhere in between. And I kind of look at it like when you're a fan of a sports team. And I'm from Boston, you're from Chicago, we're big sports fans. And like you take a Boston Red Sox fan and a New York Yankees fan, you more than likely the average person, probably 99% of the people, you cannot convince them to change their mind. You can't change a Boston Red Sox fan to become a Yankees fan and vice versa. So it's like, it's almost like it's the same type of thing when you're dealing with Donald Trump. People, it's like they're in different realities and they're not able to see the other person's point of view. I don't know whether it's emotions or what it is, but it's like in a lot of cases, it's not worth it to even discuss it because the person's just going to get angry and sometimes can't even see your point of view.
No, and that's a great point, Tara. I mean, it's really, you know, they say, like I said, the politics, religion, even sports sometimes is, you're right. I mean, I think that there's, you know, the things that bring out the emotions in us, or, you know, as even, you know, you think about family, like, you know, it's funny. You know, we do this for a living, and if it was my own child involved, my reaction to things is significantly different than it is to someone else's kid. So, you know, it's like, it's the same thing with all these things. And you're right, you're never going to convince someone that's, you know, especially, you know, in anything passionate. And again, you know, with, you know, it's funny because I have friends, you know, on Facebook that are really on both sides of the aisle. And when something happens, seeing the reaction to it is hysterical to me, because I'm almost like you know, it's like he can do no wrong in some people's eyes and he can do no right in some people's eyes. And it's like, well, I'm not going to give in. You're right. It's the same thing with the Boston Red Sox and the Yankees. You ain't convincing these people of seeing anything differently. So that's the way you have to look at it, you know.
And it's interesting. I've talked to people, or I've heard people talk about the correct way to debate someone, to have a discussion about Trump, and that's BS. Just don't even bother. In most situations, like, unless your work somehow involves, you know, politics, or discussing it is going to somehow make you money, or even personal life, in more instances than not, it's not even worth your time and energy to have the conversation about Donald Trump. Yeah,
and that's really the whole thing is, you know, I think when people, you know, I think that, again, the polarizing effect that he has as president, I think the polarizing that we dealt with during this election process has been, you know, has made people react the way that they do. You know, I mean, I love it when I'm making this as a joke. This is not my political view. I have a friend the day after Trump won on Facebook who wrote, "Anybody who needs help moving, let me know." And I thought that was funny. I thought it was very funny. And I got so much flack for that, for thinking it was funny. And I'm like, you know what? I did not say anything. I thought it was a funny line.
Yeah.
And even that innocent of a comment can lead people to being.
There's a lot of emotion involved, and then the news. It's just like, I talk a lot about don't watch the news or minimize watching the news, and like, it's just all the negativity, whether you're discussing Trump or you have whatever it is on in the background where they're talking about Trump. It's just, that's not worth it either. And for me, or just in general, I don't think it matters whether you're watching CNN, Fox News, or Alex Jones, or whatever else. It's all negative. It's all, they want to suck you in, and they want to make money off of you living in fear and anger. So that's another thing when it comes to politics, is limit how much you watch it, listen to it, read it, because you pay attention to the way your body feels when you have the news on and they're discussing politics. And I'm not saying necessarily put your head in the sand and don't pay attention to what's going on in the world, but limit it. You don't need CNN on in the background 24/7. And I have a family member that has it on all the time. I'm like, will you turn this off? I'm like, it's making me sick. It literally was making my stomach hurt having it on in the background. And I used to be someone that had it on 24/7, so I'm not one of these people that never liked TV or never had the news on, but it's not good for you.
Well, let me follow it up. It's interesting because I have a family member who was we live in Illinois, who was in Illinois politics for a long time. And, you know, he would tell the story how, you know, he was a Democrat and the governor of Illinois at that time was Republican. And he would say that, you know, in those days, you know, when there was a really tough bill they had to deal with, you know, he would call them all to the governor's house. They would all sit there and he would look at the leadership of the Republican Party and say, okay, you're going to compromise and give on this. And to the Democrats, you're going to give on this, and we have a deal. And he said the days of that are so gone now because everybody wants the quick soundbite on CNN or on Fox or on MSNBC, and everybody wants to just show who's, you know, the toughest guy in the room, as opposed to saying, look, you know, there has to be in leadership, there has to be some sort of compromise. And really what the for-profit news, and that's really what they are, is they're for-profit news, has done to our country as it's created even more divisions. Like, instead of somebody coming out and saying, what, maybe President Trump makes a good point about this, people will say, whatever he says is stupid because that's what, so-and-so said on the newscast. So to me, it's like, again, I'm trying to be very careful here because I don't want to sound like I'm skewing one way or the other, but it just almost seems to me like people just sit there and just are looking for things that people say to get angry at and looking for things that people do to get angry at as opposed to, just taking a step back like, was it really the worst thing in the world that this happened or that happened, or has it impacted you since January 20th to that much of a level that you have to stop functioning in life?
Yeah, no, and I think some people have. And the thing with, the news and being triggered and watching something or listening something to get angry, those of us with ADHD need to pay extra attention to that because it's a form of self-medication. The anger, the stuff on the news stimulates your brain. And we're also more prone to addictive behaviors. And we can become addicted to negativity, addicted to media stuff, addicted to drama and all that. So that's something to really pay attention to and be mindful of, whether it comes to discussing politics and Donald Trump, listening to it, or whatever else, that our brains are wired differently than the average person. So it's imperative that we become more mindful of it and we pay more attention to what's going on.
Right. And if you say something on social media, someone's going to find it. And, and that's the other part of this, too. And you can try to be as anonymous as you want. Someone's going to figure out who you are and what you said, and it's going to come back to you. And it's really something that people with ADHD also struggle with is that, again, it's like, I could absolutely hate something that somebody does, and I could say something really derogatory about it, and all of a sudden that person will find out about it, or somebody will find out about it that I don't necessarily want to find out about it. Yeah. It could impact you in a lot of ways. I mean, the littlest, I see people, I know this is a little bit off the subject, I see people on Facebook venting about bosses and jobs. And I'm always kind of like, let's be clear that, someone's going to see that. Yeah. And, and if somebody sees that, and let's say you're looking for a new job and companies now do their due diligence where they check social media profiles, and they find that you said that, they're not going to hire you.
Yeah. It's not just jobs. Really, I was talking to somebody who owns a bunch of properties, and she's like, oh, yeah, before I, sign a lease, I search people on social media, and if somebody posts crazy stuff on their Facebook page, I'm not going to give, that's part of, researching. And so you really need to be careful because it's not just jobs. That you might not be able to get an apartment or I don't know if it's legal to do that type of thing, but if somebody searches your Facebook profile and you're typing something they think is crazy, they're not going to want you in their life, whether it's personal or business related. So be careful.
Yeah, well, and I know of somebody who does what we do professionally who will do a little more of a background check on clients. And again, the same thing you said is like, I'm not comfortable working with this person because I feel it's going to be, because, we should also call ourselves the Yelp generation, with things like, somebody, look, I mean, and you and I are in the service industry and we do the best we can. And sometimes our work isn't a fit for somebody. And then that person's going to go out and bash you for something that's really not necessarily true. I mean, it could kill your business.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so I think, and that's the thing to be careful when you're in business and you're serving, you want to serve the entire population, don't talk about politics. And that's the thing I noticed that a lot of our colleagues, some of it's on their personal Facebook pages, but they accept like people they don't know on their personal pages, but just, I don't think it's worth discussing unless your business is based on politics or, unless, and very few people's businesses are, unless your business is based on, you only want people who love Trump, people who hate Trump, or someone in between. It's not good for business to discuss your opinion of Donald Trump or politics.
Yep, and that's I guess back to the original point. You're dealing with just a very polarizing. Look, I mean, I think even as me being a diehard fan, being from Chicago, I'm a Bears fan. I mean, I wouldn't say to someone, if you're a Packers fan, I'll never work with you. I mean, I may hate them, but, I can separate the two topics. But, when it comes to politics, though, there are people that would say that, if I came across as leaning one way or the other, would feel very uncomfortable working with me because of my politics. And I think that's something, again, you may not like something that's done. And again, we do have a First Amendment. You do absolutely 100% have the rights of freedom of speech. But you have to remember, within freedom of speech is people can also have freedom to disagree. Yeah. And if it impacts your life, you probably need to look at the things that you're saying and doing that make people do that.
Oh, it's funny. I had it impact my business because on my ADD class's Twitter profile, I have a paper that goes out once or twice a day. And I had it set up so it was following a lot of my colleagues. And after the election, a lot of my colleagues started posting things about not liking Trump or against Trump. And I had a couple people contacting me who were, I don't know what their views are, but they were upset with these. So I had to go in and change the people it was following, because I know that I want, the ADD, paper to be about ADHD specific stuff, or things, maybe a little bit that may not be specifically ADHD, but something's going to help ADHD. And it was there were 4 or 5 different colleagues who I've known for over a decade, who I like and respect, but they were posting, political stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But it was I saw it in action. It was upsetting people. And I probably should have, gone in earlier and, tweaked it and made sure, paid more attention to it. But that forced me to go in and be more mindful of the fact that it's not a good idea to be talking about politics right now. So I got a little backlash from it, and I wasn't even the one talking about the politics. I wasn't giving my view.
But again, you're always associated by that. That friend of mine on Facebook, when he made the comment about helping people move, and I thought it was funny. Yeah. And, I'm a sarcastic guy, as you will verify, just for all your listeners who might otherwise. I can be a little sarcastic. Yeah. Probably was too soon. And it really put me sort of into a box that I didn't necessarily want to be in. And it was it's because people come to me oh, I can't believe you support him. I said, well, that's not what I was saying. Again, I'm not telling you who I support and don't support. Not what I said. But again, perception defeats reality. And the minute you attach yourself to anything automatically, because again, we're in that snippet world, like the Facebook post of innocently laughing at someone, all of a sudden might lump you in with other people. And again, you have to be careful of those things. Yep.
So we are actually getting towards the end of today's show. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to leave people with today when it comes to politics, Donald Trump, and ADHD? And could you give out your contact information before we get going?
Sure. Well, again, I think it's to our earlier topic we had about, the use of social media. I think this topic is more about politics, but I think in any place that you go, remember what you say is, it goes without saying, but what you say represents yourself. And the comments that you make, just because you make a comment doesn't mean people are going to receive it the way that you want them to receive it. So if you make a comment about the president, you make a comment about someone's shirt, you make a comment about the ground, whatever it is that you do, people may misunderstand this. So the important thing is, if you have an opinion, it's okay. But sometimes you might want to filter your opinion and then refilter it again and then filter it a third time before indicating it, to understand how people receive that information. And again, we're not taking away freedoms. We're just making sure that you understand that sometimes when you talk about something controversial, people may misunderstand it. So with that, I'll give you my contact info one more time. I am Jonathan Carroll. I am an ADHD and executive functioning coach. You can see my website at ADHDguru.com. You can call me at area code 877-398-2343. You can call me at area code 877-398-2343. Email me to Jonathan at ADHDEFcoach.com, and you can find me at ADHD Guru on Twitter and my YouTube page and my podcast under the same name.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan Carroll, and thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to ADHD Support Talk Radio. And if you have not already, stop by our new website, ADHDSupportTalk.com. It's brand new. We have featured guests, featured podcasts, and you can also sign up for my newsletter there. Thanks again, everyone. And that's ADHDSupportTalk.com. Thanks again, everyone.
Napa know-how.
A Napa guy knows more isn't always better, unless we're talking about full-size vans. These beasts do more than get you from A to B. They have so much space a man can live in it. With shag carpeting, waterbed, and a sweet lava lamp, these mobile abodes have all the comforts of home. With quality parts and plenty of Napa know-how, you can keep the original tiny house running longer, stronger. That's Napa know-how.
Napa know-how.
Life is full of big moments. Getting married, having kids, moving into a new home. These are the kind of moments that change everything. And they might have you making changes to things you don't always think about, like your health coverage. Covered California wants you to know that when you have a big life change, you may be able to enroll in health coverage or adjust your current plan. The enrollment window is limited, so to see if you qualify or to find one of our local experts, visit coveredca.com today. Covered California. It's more than just health care. It's life care.